Welcome to Conventional Infrastructure Concepts. It's a bonus feature from this course. It is important to understand data center components such as storage, network load balancers, proxies, LDAP, etc. It will help you to apply the same principles into the cloud to understand them better. OSI model. It was developed by ISO in 1970s to define standards for data center design and build. Look at the diagram on the right side. The OSI model has 7 layers. When you see a content or the video in your browser, it travels through all 7 layers to reach you. OSI model brings discipline to build data center and give global understanding among network providers to manage their service levels. Storage is a mechanism to store the data either temporarily or permanently. Direct attached storage. A good example is the hard disk at your laptop. Organization use two types of storage, network attached storage and block storage. Network attached storage is an array of disks with built-in failover and fault tolerance. If one hard disk fails, you will not get outage. The second hard disk will take over. It gives file-level access. A good use case for network attached storage is Microsoft SharePoint in your organization. Block storage store the data in block level. It's made of partitions. Mostly we use them at the database level. If when an application accesses the block data, the performance gets better. Object storage is the invention of cloud computing. The above three storage need a computer or server to mount. Object storage don't need a computer. You can write the API code from any machine and access the data from object storage. Microsoft Blob is a good example for object storage. Virtual machine. Virtual machine is the software representation of the host operating system. Look at the diagram at the right side. You have a physical server, operating system, hypervisor, and guest operating system. Hypervisor controls all guest operating system. A guest OS is a virtual machine. It has full-blown operating system. The virtualization does hardware-based virtualization. Some examples for virtualization software are Microsoft Hyper-V and VMware. Web and application server. A web server is a server software that hosts website. Mostly it hosts static content such as HTML, images, and scripts. The example for web server is Microsoft IIS, Apache, and Nginx. Application server is a transactional web server that talks to your database. It hosts business application. Some examples, Microsoft.NET Framework, Oracle WebLogic, and IBM WebSphere. SQL and NoSQL Database. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. SQL lets you access and operate the Relational Database Management System. The Relational Database Management System stores the data with a discipline. It has an object called table. It stores the data. Some examples for RDBMS are Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, and MySQL. NoSQL started gaining momentum after the invention of smartphone and social networking. The entry what you make at social networking is not a structured entry, it is an unstructured data. The unstructured data needs a tool that is a NoSQL database. The development team can use Python, Node.js, Java, .NET to access the data in the NoSQL database. Some examples are MongoDB and etcd from Kubernetes. Network load balancers. Load balancing gives failover. It also distributes the load across multiple backend servers or resources. There are two types of load balancing, layer 4 and layer 7. Layer 4 works on the TCP level. It knows about the IP and port. Layer 7 is a content-aware load balancer. For example, if your URL has /video, the layer 7 load balancing sends the request to the server that hosts video. If it has /images, It sends records to the server that has images. Some example for layer 4, layer 7 load balancers are F5 BigIP, Nginx, and Barracuda. Network proxies. There are two types of network proxies, forward proxy and reverse proxy. The forward proxy allows the internal resources to access the outside services such as udemy.com, google.com. It also blocks certain sites and gives policies to the organization discipline. The reverse proxy does the exact opposite of what forward proxy does. It lets the outside users to come into your data center or come into your corporate to get the specific data or application. The reverse proxy does content redirection. The Azure Web Application Firewall is a good example for the reverse proxy. LDAP Directory. It's a database. It stores organization employees' name, hierarchy, your fax machine, telephones, printing machine, they all stay in the LDAP directory. It is also a user authentication mechanism. When you go into your corporate and log into your machine, most of the time, the authentication mechanism is coming from the LDAP directory. A very good example for LDAP directory is Microsoft Active Directory. Containers is a lightweight virtual machine that virtualizes the host operating system. Remember this, virtualization virtualizes the host hardware. Containers virtualize the host operating system. A container contains application, operating system libraries, and some configuration files. However, they share the operating system kernel for majority of the operations. It has a small footprint. It shares OS kernel. It gives you consistent environment. Some examples for containers are Docker and Podman. Container orchestration. Container is a standalone runtime component. You need a tool to distribute those containers in a highly available, highly scalable cloud systems. That's where Kubernetes comes in place. I often say this, Docker is a bullet, Kubernetes is the gun. If you look at the diagram, there is one container at the left side. When it goes through Kubernetes, Kubernetes does provision them into the cloud, it does the deployment, it does resource allocation, auto scaling, load balancing. It has many features for the container to make them available to the end user. DevOps is a set of practices that combines software development and IT operations. DevOps made immutable infrastructure possible. For example, not only your application code, your infrastructure code also stores in the GitHub. You can build an application, containerize it. You can also build the target Kubernetes system to deploy the application. When the second release of application comes, you update the GitHub and build the new environment for the version 2 of your application, test it, then go to the version 1 infrastructure and get it done. This is called immutable infrastructure. DevOps helps you to speed to market your applications. Multi-tier architecture. Look at this diagram. The user wants to request something out of the database. He goes through DNS, firewall, load balancers, web application servers, database, then he goes to the storage. It's a good example for the OSI model. You can see the type of multi-tier architecture in the cloud when we go through further sessions. Data center is a physical building. This is where the house, your servers, routers, switches, firewalls, and all other physical devices with physical security. It has cooling, it has fault tolerance, it has physical security to take care of your systems. Disaster recovery is part of the business continuity planning in organization. If you look at the diagram, I have a data center in Chicago, Illinois, and I have second data center in Dallas, Texas. Both are same. Chicago is a very cold place. If a snowstorm knock out the Chicago data center, the Dallas data center still serve the business without any interruption. This is called disaster recovery. We have seen several data center components and we understood some non-functional factors. Next session, cloud computing concepts.